Howdy, Ace Young here for the Sheridan channel, Channel 22. We're all about the BrewFest these days, and my guest is Mark Demple. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, your great-grandfather was one of the founders of the Sheridan Brewery.
Yes, Peter Demple was one of the founders of the Sheridan Brewery, along with Arnold Scherge and George Paul.
And of course, Sheridan Brewery, that thing was in business for, what, close to 75 years. And it'd been nice if it was still around, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not around anymore. And there's a park in its place today, Whitney Park.
Yeah. But as far as its roots, tell me about that and your great-grandfather. How did all that take place?
Okay. Well, Peter Demple came to the U.S. from Germany in 1880. And ended up in Topeka, Kansas, and made friends with Arnold Scherge and George Paul.
In Topeka?
In Topeka, Kansas, yeah.
And of course, I'm thinking the German background, that's very popular among the brewers, right?
Right, yeah, a lot of farmland out there, and they decided to pick Sheridan as a location for a brewery. Okay. And so in 1887, they came to Sheridan to establish a brewery.
Now, meanwhile, from Topeka to Sheridan, how did they raise the money for that brewery?
Well, that's still kind of an unknown. Between the three of them, they had $10,000 in gold, which they needed to get to Sheridan. And
in gold?
In gold, yep. $10,000 in gold, and that was a lot of money in those days. Around $240,000 in today's money. And so they were going to ship it up here on the Cheyenne Deadwood stage, and there's some bandits out there, some thieves out there that got wind that this gold was going to be coming, so they kept holding up the Cheyenne stage.
More than once?
More than once. And it was prone to that anyway, but it kind of increased with that knowledge. So they decided to outsmart the thieves and bring it up through the Northern Pacific Railroad to the Custer Station in Montana. And then from there, they brought it on a wagon and horses down into Sheridan and started the brewery.
I'm glad they made it, because that was, as you point out, the seed money for the Sheridan Brewery, which almost didn't make it.
It almost didn't make it, but through their perseverance, it did. And in that same year, the three gentlemen that started the brewery, Demple, Scherge, and Paul, they all built houses at the same time. So all in all, they had about $24,000 worth of investment that went in that year.
Part of that rich history has to do with Prohibition. Did they lie low during those years? Well,
no, not really. The brewery was doing Canopop during that time, but Peter Demple was very adamant that Prohibition should be done away with, and he wrote an article, and it was put in the Cody paper in the late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember exactly, but it was a very well-written piece on why Prohibition should be repealed.
And of course, talking about the history of Sheridan Brewery, Prohibition, that was a tough time. And of course, I imagine competition later during the 50s and 60s had to be tough with the huge breweries. And eventually, of course, Sheridan Brewery was no more. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, the brewery was right on this site where we are right now.
Yeah, you're standing on the spot where the brewery once sat.
And you were here when it was knocked down, demolished?
I was here in Sheridan when that was taken down, yes.
That had to be sad.
It was sad to see that happen, when you're connected to something like that and you see it, there's an end of an era, so to speak, and where you had entrepreneurs come with, starting from scratch basically and building that business up, and to have it last that long and then to see it taken down that way.
I wouldn't recommend people doing it, but I'm sure buried under here are probably old bottle caps and who knows what. Got to ask, concerning the history, did he leave you any gold, any stock, or anything like that in terms of the Sheridan Brewery, Mark?
Well, we're still looking for the gold if there's any left, and haven't found all of his hiding places yet. But left me a good taste for beer, and the history of our family being involved in the Sheridan Brewery here in Sheridan.
Meanwhile, you mentioned Canopop, and that has quite a rich Sheridan history as well, because that was the very first canning process for beverages anywhere.
Yeah, that's a pretty exciting piece of history for Sheridan to have that Canopop being developed right here in our community.
Mark, I got to ask a question. Any inklings of you wanting to start a brewery anytime soon?
I'd love to do that, and we've got a great brewery here now, and hopefully in the future they latch on to that Sheridan recipe and put it out through here.
I like that idea. Great brewery, great history, and of course it all has to do with the upcoming BrewFest. Reporting for the Sheridan Channel, Channel 22, this is Ace Young.
For tickets and information, visit SheridanWyomingChamber.org or call 307-672-2485.